the bulk of what they teach in the US educational system through all grades is completely fucking useless. Like, the example I love to give is that, like, people love to argue that actually, no, it's all useful. Like, learning how to do advanced mathematics, it allows you and sets you up to be able to do, like, accounting and banking or architecture or, you know, whatever else like that, right? Fair point. The problem is that I can now immediately weaponize that point you just made and say that's exactly why it's irrelevant, because this is you know, normal general education, right? It's the normal school for a grade school, right? For anybody who's just likely going to try to enter the workforce, and of course they're still going to try to get an entry level job, including even if they do go to university, college, whatever you want to call it, or not. They're still going to, especially if they do that, they're definitely going to get a job. But either way, they're going to get a job. So that's entry level. So it's still technically not useful. It only becomes useful if it's an elective once it gets past a certain point, whether that is math or science or chemistry or, you know, biology or whatever else, literally any other topic. There's only to an extent does it really matter to teach that to anybody when they're kids growing up, because eventually it hits a point where now it's becoming excessive because their brain's not going to retain it, because brains don't retain information like that if it's not used. If it goes unused for too long, you forget. This is why most people in the US are incompetent with geography, to where half the time they don't even know their own backyard literally and how to navigate without using a GPS, which is especially egregious, and I hate that. But then I'm very biased because I'm extremely into geography. So but anyway, it's a very basic, simple thing. I don't understand why it's so confusing for people, but you know, an example, that's why people forget that. Or again, most people in the US especially forget a lot of the more advanced math, because they're never going to use it. Even if they get a courtesy clerk job at a grocery store, especially modern day, where it's already digitally done now, where it tells you how much to give and change or whatever, it's no longer, it's even less necessary to give that math now, because it's already done for them, right?
Exactly.
But even if you want to do it just in case like a power outage happens, now they still have to do that. At the very least, it's still basic math. You're not teaching fucking pre-algebra to fucking do a courtesy clerk job, obviously,
Exactly.
right? So that's why all the topics they teach in school need to be to a certain point. It just teach the basics and maybe the advanced basics and leave it at that. And then everything else becomes an elective. So now
That's a valid point.
nobody else for the rest of their childhoods, which obviously includes teen years, are in school until they decide to take an elective. Say some kid is really fucking interested in becoming an architect or a carpenter, or becoming this big financial, person, what do you call it? Like a fiduciary or something. Then at
Exactly.
that point, they can take their electives in advanced mathematics.
Exactly.
Congratulations. And it's that easy, right? Because see, in those blank years where they're not necessarily having to go to school because they've completed the advanced basics, advanced basics, they obviously don't need anything more. They're free. They can spend the rest of their childhood as childhood should, which is being free, being able to
Exactly.
be kids, learn things on their own. You know, go and fall and rip their knee open or break their
Exactly.
toe or nearly fucking drowned because they thought it would be clever to hide underneath a pool floaty or something and hide and seek match, or all the different things that get diseases because you played in the mud and then you didn't think to wash your hands because you're still having too much fucking fun with your best friends or whatever, or your neighbor
Exactly.
in your neighborhood. Like all the things that kids are supposed to do. And then obviously as you get to teen years, it becomes even more, you can become more inquisitive, especially about more important things just naturally, especially if the parents did the right thing and they were actually good helpful parents. They aren't overbearing but also not the ones that just don't care and are aloof, or apathetic to doing their jobs. It's still technically semi-elective, I guess is what it would be. So this is why I said that. But basically you now have other classes that would replace the things
Yes.
of beyond advanced basics. An example, you would give people basic survivalism classes, urban and obviously wild, because those are always useful, incredibly helpful, necessary skills.
Yes.
Because you never know when shit hits the fan. You never know when the whole power infrastructure goes down. You never know when a war breaks out. You never know when you might end up homeless or whatever else, or you might end up lost when you went camping and you somehow got completely turned around and lost, and now you're stuck out in the wilderness somewhere. Even if it's rare, it's still one of the most incredibly powerful skills you can have. Another example is basic carpentry. Basic home ec, at least, if not advanced home ec. Although advanced home ec, again, anything advanced, I think, even these things should be elective. They shouldn't be required, right? So everything else gets replaced with these basic skills, the basic levels of those classes. So basic mechanics, basic finance. That includes, obviously, it includes tax classes. It includes classes on mortgages. It includes classes on loans, on renting, on obviously subscriptions, on everything else to balance your budget and to actually know really what you're doing, how to save, right? All these basic things that are desperately needed. At the very least, teach the taxes and the mortgage stuff, and the basic budgeting stuff, because that's such an imperative thing that everyone literally requires, especially in the modern world. Gardening. I think actually gardening is a huge basic skill that should be taught by default, because
absolutely
people, and in fact, especially if they have good teachers, because this is the key to a good teacher, is that they're not overly, like a parent actually, they're not overly strict and like strong-fisted, but they're also not, or short fused, right, or timered, but they're also not too laid back and aloof and like, meh, I don't really give a fuck. They have to be in that balanced spot where they have good qualities of both extremes to balance themselves out. That's the best kind of parent. That's the best kind of teacher. Another key point to a good teacher and parent, but especially teacher at that point, is that they have to be able to understand how to make a class entertaining. Because in order to be engaging and thus be remembered, and actually people learn it not just willingly, but their brains want to learn it and be like, I like this. And so in other words, that's called engagement. It's engaging and focusing on the topic, whatever the heck the class is about. That's the only happens with entertainment. Exactly. It has to be made entertaining in order to be engaging, and then that's the only way. If it has to be engaging in order to be retained.
Exactly.
And actually learned. And actually have the best graduation rates, so to speak, and everything else. Because it wasn't like, oh, this was forced or a fabricated number, or like we had to do all these makeup classes because, kids just didn't care. It's because they literally fucking did what they're supposed to as a good educator, and that's make it engaging and involved and fun. So that, especially if it involves equally hands-on, if not make it fully hands-on, so that way literally they get the hands-on lived experience as well of learning these things. And especially with those other topics that you'd replace the advanced stuff beyond the advanced basics with those home ec and the gardening or the mechanics of the, whatever, all the different things, right? These necessary skills. That's the best ones to have fully hands-on as well. One thing I actually thought of when you were talking about when you took home ec is that even if I was all the way through high school and mainstream, I wouldn't have been able to take home ec. You know why? It was, well, it didn't exist for most of the time I was in school. In fact, actually, I think they only brought back home ec for like 2 years in Beaverton School District, along with basic mechanics and carpentry.
Are you kidding?
For like 2 years after I was out of school. I would have been graduated. So they hadn't had it for like decades. Huh. But what they did, which again, me and him are only like separated by a decade. I think our ages are 9 years apart, right?
I'm 40 years old.
8 years. We're 8 years apart. So that means that he would have graduated in 2004. I would have graduated in 2012. So see, that's what I meant earlier when I mentioned the difference between us, is that I wonder if that time period was somehow different, or my time period in school was different, and the change happened during that portion of time. I don't know, but that means that there's already a difference there, because he did have home ec. Yep. It's the same school district, but by the time I was in school, they hadn't had home ec for a few years. And they had removed it. They claimed it was too expensive, those extra classes that are actually useful, like home ec, like mechanics, like carpentry. Horticulture is what I mean, technically. Horticulture, but including gardening. Yeah. Those all were removed by the Beaverton School District, because they claimed it's way too expensive to do. So here's the thing, though. They re-implemented it for 2 years. But what they did is they did what a lot of other school districts in this nation have done over the last like 2 decades, and that is they made it to where you had to get, I think it's B's or B pluses in every single topic in school, at least. And some of them, actually, you had to be a honor roll valedictorian in order to choose to enter them. But and Beaverton School District did, I think it was the B, all Bs or all B pluses is what you had to have. And you had to have a lot of money because they charged you just to enter the classes at all. If you wanted to take them,
Are you kidding?
they're electives. If you wanted to take them, they charged you. I think it was like, depending on what it was, the topic and how far you want to go into it. I think it was like between $400 and $1,200.
What the?
So like you had to be pretty rich, or your family did, and you also fucking had to almost be an honor roll valedictorian.
What the?
Otherwise, you had no ability. They would not allow you to elect to take those classes, it's a very commonplace in the U.S. now, and has been for about 20 years. Is that like they want to charge you a lot of money, and they also want to make sure you're like borderline valedictorian honor roll, or literally only on that, and that's the only ones who can take it.
No sense.
Yeah, and it's fucked up. It's. I think there's nothing okay or defensible about that policy. It's royally screwed up, and so
It's fucked up.
in that vein, I think that if it comes back, again, I hope it's the way I said it was. This replaces all the excess beyond, advanced basics of all the topics they teach. If they made them come back as electives, I want it to be like a federal mandate in the U.S. to where it can't be changed ever again, to where it's like it has to be free, and anyone can elect to take it. Especially considering, in my experience, and I know a lot of other people out there like this, we're still a minority, but there's a lot of other people like this, is that the more you are impassioned or love a topic, the more you excel at it, and the more you actually do, the more you excel at it. So the better you do, by a long shot. And that's especially true in the educational system. Like for me, that was true with that 6th grade thing that my 5th grade teacher petitioned them to allow me to do instead of holding me back. And it was going to this special school, nature school in Five Oaks called Rachel Carson. And it was, the nature school was on top of and in tandem with the normal curriculum. So it was your normal school, and then on top of that, you also have the nature school. I instantly was way above my grade average, and I was by far the best student they had, and I just excelled like a motherfucker at everything the nature school, which I knew I would. And I felt so safe, I felt so comfortable, I felt so happy and like energized. I was in my fucking element.